This is Shine On Policycast, the podcast that brings you EU policy updates relevant to solar. I'm your host Bethany. Let's get started. So today I'm here with Naomi Chevillard, our Head of Regulatory Affairs. So welcome, Naomi. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And we have a bit of a tradition on Policycast this year for guests to bring a prop and to have me guess what the prop has to do with what we're going to talk about today. So I see that you've brought us something, Naomi. Do you want to just describe it for people who are listening?
Yes. So the prop I brought is a beautiful yellow microphone.
Okay.
So do you know why I brought it?
Well, it fits very nicely with our collection of podcast mics, but I guess it's to do with interviewing and getting people to say their piece, which is a bit about the hearings and the commissioner hearings that we'll talk about today. Cool.
Yeah, well done. Exactly. Yeah, it's because it's a moment where we talk about the program of the next commission when we hear the different commissioner designate.
Yeah. So we just finished the hearings mostly.
Last week.
And that's like the latest step in setting the direction for the EU for the next 5 years after the elections in June. So do you want to just take us a step back and talk about what the commissioner hearings are and how we got there and a bit about the process?
Yes. So the commissioners have been actually designated. So they're called commissioner designate for the moment because they've been designated by the council. So each member state has the right to designate one commissioner candidate. And then the president of the commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has assigned them different portfolios. But of course, they have to be validated by the other big democratic institution of the EU, which is the parliament. You have the council and the European Parliament that are the big institutions in the EU. And so the parliament in December, as currently planned, will validate the whole college of commissioners. But before and to be able to make their choice, they are hearing the commissioners to know more about their visions for the job, but also who they are and what's their background.
Right, so just a big televised job interviews, basically.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
3-hour-long job interviews.
A very tough job interview, though.
So there's 27 commissioners, one of which is President von der Leyen. But who are the most important commissioners for us in the solar sector? I mean, they're all important, but who are we looking at in particular?
But for the solar sector, we're going to look at the commissioners that work on energy policy, of course. So we have an executive vice president, Teresa Ribera, who is overseeing sustainable growth together with competition. And she will work with the Commissioner for Energy, Dan Jorgensen, who is a Danish commissioner who has been MEP before in the parliament. And as well, Wopke Hoekstra, the Dutch commissioner for climate, who was there in the previous commission replacing Frans Timmermans, and who will look at climate policy and the 2040 decarbonisation target of the EU. But we also will listen very closely at two commissioners that work on industrial policy. It's the French commissioner, actually executive vice president as well, Stéphane Séjourné, who will be leading on prosperity and industrial strategy and all topics linked to competitiveness. And a commissioner that we know quite well, Maroš Šefčovič, I think it's his third mandate, if I'm not mistaken, who will be leading on trade.
So there's definitely a few people to really care about there. But maybe we zoom in. So Dan Jorgensen, he's going to be Commissioner for Energy and Housing. He's coming off the back of Kadri Simpson's time, and she introduced the solar strategy and definitely presided over a big time in solar history in Europe. So what can we expect from Commissioner Jorgensen's potential time in office? Should he be confirmed? I mean, what are we thinking is going to happen there?
So Jorgensen is going to have a number of files in this portfolio. The first one is providing a plan on affordable energy prices that is part of the clean industrial deal that we're expecting from the Commission. So how can we lower energy prices that we have seen going a bit higher in the last years? A second thing is an action plan on how to exit Russian fossil fuels imports. The REPower EU plan had set a deadline of 2027 for the EU to stop importing energy from Russia, and now we're midway through the deadline, so we need to
speed up.
Speed up, exactly. But all of that will be done by advancing the energy transition. That's clearly what came out of von der Leyen's political guidelines, and that will materialize in two initiatives that he will also have to lead. The first one is an electrification action plan to understand how we can accelerate electrification, particularly in the industrial sector. And the second one, it's an initiative on demand response and storage, because with more renewables, with more electric uses, we need more responsive energy system. So we need more storage, and we need more demand response. And those two topics are particularly important for the solar sector. What we have seen very positive is that Dan Jorgensen, during his hearing, has referred several times to the need to double electrification in Europe. He also referred to the need to grow flexibility, battery storage, as well as grids growth. And on top of that, I think he's also is very convinced, and I think he's really understood that renewables have an important role to play in Europe. He clearly mentioned that regardless of other sources, of the role that other energy sources will have to play in the system, renewables are here today to help with the transition away from Russian imports, and at low costs. So there is no discussion to have on the need to deploy renewables fast today.
Yeah, so positive signs from us for Dan Jorgensen, at least.
Yeah.
And then if we look a bit at the upstream side of things, trade, manufacturing, there's a few commissioner designates that you mentioned there, Shevkovich, Sejourné, and Ribera. What sort of elements are we seeing from them in terms of industrial strategy, trade policy that might impact the solar sector?
But I think what transpires from their hearing, and also what we really read in the political guidelines of von der Leyen and also of the Draghi report, is that decarbonization must go together with competitiveness and vice versa. And that's why we're going to have a clean industrial deal. Not an industrial deal, not a clean deal, a clean industrial deal, a deal that has both components. And so that's the first big piece that both of them will work on. This clean industrial deal will aim at ensuring competitiveness together with decarbonization. That means for energy intensives to keep, for industries at large, and in particular energy intensives, to keep on their decarbonization course, but also for them to have the means to make it a real industrial strategy, to have a big market for green steel, for example, in Europe. And on the other hand, have a framework for clean tech manufacturers to keep innovating, growing, and deploying their technologies in Europe. And so how will we do that? There are several things that we can work on. The first one is to give them a framework to be competitive at the level of, for example, energy prices. So that links back to the action plan on affordable energy prices. There will be also a reflection on how we open markets for green products. For example, through public procurements, there will be a revision of the public procurement directive. There will be a reflection on how we use state aid, how we can better use state aid to protect and support sectors that are strategic. And there is a big investment plan, a strategy that's needed. And and so that will be through two interesting tools. The first one is the Competitiveness Fund that will support a priori clean tech manufacturers and important projects of common European interest, IPCIs, who do their great comeback on the EU scene, and which are a way for member states to bundle state aid to invest into common industrial projects, like common Airbus type of project. Voilà.
But we'd want it for electrification products and smart electronic devices and things like inverters and all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. In all sectors of the clean energy transition, the next big thing is digitalization and how we use data to create new services. But as you said, the digitalization, it's software, it's hardware, it's electronics, and we use that in all sectors. We have solar inverters, the EV industry also has inverters, the battery as well, and we still have manufacturers in Europe, and we need to support them. So that will be for us a big topic in the next mandate. Yeah.
So plenty to do for those commissioners designate. So then building on from the clean industrial deal side of things and industrial strategy side of things, what might we expect in terms of trade policy?
So from the hearings, I think we can clearly see that the Commission will use trade policy a lot more in the next. They're ready to use it a lot more. We've seen early November the Commission approving tariffs on EV imports from China, and then on top of that, even how we plan to use public procurement with more resilience criteria, which are sort of local content criteria, or kind of means that we're going to use similar type of tools to protect strategic supply chains. However, as it was mentioned in the Draghi report, there will be also a bit more of a strategic view on which supply chains will be targeted. I don't think we can expect it for solar modules, but rather the supply chains
that's trade measures that probably won't apply to solar modules.
No. And on the contrary, the supply chains that are mentioned are steel, wind turbines, and electric vehicles, of course.
Okay, well, we'll have to see how that impacts the wider kind of clean tech transition.
Yeah.
So then if we zoom out a little bit to kind of the wider topic of sustainability, climate, biodiversity, you mentioned Hoekstra, but there's also Christoph Hansen will be joining as Commissioner Designate for Agriculture and Food, which obviously crosses over with solar quite a lot. So what do we expect from their mandates? Are we going to see better cooperation between agriculture and energy, and how's that all going to be linked going forward, do we think? Big question.
I think there are two things. So first of all, the farming industry is suffering. Some specific parts of the farming industry in particular, for economic reasons and other reasons, and we need to support them, and that will be at the heart of the revision of the Common Agricultural Policy, which is the main subsidy tool that we have in the EU to support farmers. The CAP, it's part of the EU budget that runs over 7 years, and the next budget is planned for 2027. So we'll start working on the CAP next year, actually, and building a CAP that works for farmers, that supports adequately farmers, will be at the heart of the mandate of Hansen. At the same time, it's true that it's now widely recognized that we need also agriculture to decarbonize and regenerate biodiversity, because climate change is hurting them in the first place. The droughts in the south of Europe are not good for the farming sector, and we have a number of texts that create new obligations. There is the LULUCF that will be revised as part of the 2040 climate target. There is the nature restoration law that creates an objective to restore biodiversity on agricultural land, that has been finally adopted, and that will be
a long road.
and that will be implemented in the next years. And So, but to implement all of these rules in a context that's difficult for the farmers, we need to find solutions that are economically viable for farmers. And I think that's where, AgriSolar has a role to play, because we're working on solutions that provide complementary revenue to farmers, at the same time can help them protect their crops against climate change or extreme climate events. So there will be a lot to discuss there.
Great. So so plenty of commissioners to look at there, and they finished their hearings now. So what's the next kind of steps in this whole process? I mean, when will they be in office? When will their work really kick off? I mean, what do the next couple of months look like?
So at the moment, most commissioners have been actually confirmed by the parliament, with the exception of 8 commissioners. That and really it's a negotiation between the different parties on who is going to be validated or not. There should be a vote to validate. I mean, the plan was to have a vote to validate the College of Commissioners early December. We're not fully certain that this will happen. It might be slightly delayed, but we hope that we'll have a full college very soon. And from there, the Commission will take office and start working and delivering on the files that they've committed to deliver. Some of the files have been announced for the first 100 days. That's typical when the Commission takes office. And so, we can expect the Clean Industrial Deal. We can expect an affordable housing plan. I didn't talk about that, but it's a plan to support affordable housing and support also the EU construction and renovation industry, and the plan on affordable energy prices.
So it'll be a busy first 100 days, whether that starts in December or maybe January.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for sharing your insights today, Naomi. If people want to find out a bit more about what you're working on, where can they find you on social media?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn.
You're not on Blue Sky yet?
No.
Oh, thanks so much for joining, Naomi. It's always a pleasure to have you on Policycast.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. This podcast is brought to you by SolarPower Europe. If you don't want to miss our next episode, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Shine on.